Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special Sunday edition of Dread Time Stories. I'm your host, Dr. Phobia, and tonight is a very special event indeed. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but we were really close to 100 subscribers, around 98 or 99. Now we're sitting at 102. So unfortunately I missed the exact date in which we hit 100 subscribers, but the fact of the matter is the channel has 100 subscribers and I couldn't be more thrilled. I am just so ecstatic that 100 plus people actually enjoy what I'm doing. So thank you from the bottom of what's left of my heart. It's been over a year since I started this YouTube channel and I never expected it to get this far, but I'm so happy that it did. Now, in honor of the 100 subscribers that we now have, I have decided to read one of my favorite creepypastas. Actually, in my opinion, this is one of the best creepypastas that has ever been written. So I hope you enjoy it just as much as I do. So, since it's a long one of the longer ones out there actually, sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's special tale, 1999. The year is 1999. That sentence brings me back to my senior kindergarten class when I was 5 years old, where we used to read out the date on the blackboard every single day. The year 1999 exists as a stain on my mind, however, a memory that will not go away no matter how hard I try to forget it. 1999 marked the year I lost my first tooth, my first time on a plane, and unfortunately the early loss of my childhood innocence. That one memory that refuses to be wiped. It all started with that new or old TV. At the time, Pokemon was the latest fad to hit the school. Pokemon cards, games, stickers, and most popular of all, the TV show. So of course, when I came home from school, I would stay glued to the TV until Pokemon came on at 5. The only problem was that my dad watched the news at 5:30, and Pokemon episodes were back to back, which meant I had to miss an episode every day. Something I whined on and on about. My dad got tired of hearing me complain every day. That must have been why he went and bought another TV. My dad put the TV he bought in my room. Unfortunately, it was just an old, small boob tube, with rabbit ears even. It only had 20 channels available, not including the channel Pokemon was on. I recall I didn't care though. I was just thrilled I had my own TV in my room. After surfing through the channels, I came to the conclusion that only one channel, 2TVO Kids, was worth watching, so I watched that for a while. It wasn't for a few more months that I discovered Channel 21. One day in April, I was flipping through the channels trying to see if Pokemon was on. I pressed Channel 21 into the remote, hoping there were more channels, and to my delight, there was. My dad was surprised too, but he let me watch it because it seemed to have kids programs on. The channel was called Caledon Local 21, and after I found out it was indeed broadcasted from the town of Caledon, Ontario, a town very close to my city. The shows I saw on Caledon Local 21 looked poorly made, and I never understood what was going on in them half the time. However, as I grew up, every time I thought of that channel, I realized more and more how messed up the shows were, and I had to ask myself, what the hell was I watching? The following is a list of shows and episodes I remember seeing on Caledon Local 21. How I remember such detail even disturbs me, but I guess things like this stand out in your mind for a while. There were only 3 shows I could find on the channel, probably because the channel was only operational between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. April 1999. Booby, Episode 6, Together. I recall Booby was a show where the characters were simply live-action hands, no puppets or anything, just hands. The show featured a hand named Booby who found himself in a new situation every episode. The show was only 5 minutes long and looked like it was shot in front of a damp, decaying wall, with the hands always on a table with a red tablecloth. Very low budget, obviously. This was the first episode I watched. The episode began with Booby trying to get ketchup out of a bottle. It actually showed him beating himself against the side of the bottle for a good 3 minutes. Finally, another hand came by and looked at Booby and said, "Together," and then began beating the bottle as well until some ketchup finally squirted out all over the table. I chuckled slightly at this part. Booby then stared at the ketchup mess for a few seconds before turning towards the camera as it slowly zoomed in on him. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 12. Very sketchy name if you were to look at it nowadays. The show featured a guy wearing a bear mascot costume who would get a new visitor to his cellar every day. It was always a kid. The show was filmed with a camcorder, and not a very good one either. The police asked me a lot of questions about this show. This episode started with Mr. Bear sitting at a table playing checkers by himself. I didn't realize it at first, but the table was the same one from Booby. He sat there playing for a bit until there was a knock at the door. The camera was then looking up the stairs at the door, where there was another knock. Mr. Bear climbed the stairs and opened the door, revealing 2 young children. One was a boy about my age, and the other was a girl who looked to be about 8. Mr. Bear danced in delight and then started talking to the kids. I couldn't hear any of them that well, I can remember. Mr. Bear then led the kids into the cellar, which was quite dark, only lit by a small oil lamp on the table. I can't remember much more than that, except him singing a song in which I couldn't hear too well, either because of the bear mask. I can't remember much more except him singing a song which I couldn't hear too well because of the bear mask. The episode ended with them playing hide and seek, with the kids hiding in a closet and Mr. Bear counting. May 1999. Soup and Spoon. I don't think this was even a show. I think it was more of a special movie thing. All I know is that I stopped watching Caledon Local 21 for a while because I thought the show was too stupid, especially since Pokemon now came on at 4:30 and 5. I don't remember much of this, but it showed a can of soup and a spoon, both attached to strings, swinging back and forth, as if someone was holding them and dangling them in front of the camera. Interesting enough, the show was shot in a basement, which looked just like the one used in Mr. Bear's cellar. Like I said, I can't remember much. The only thing I can remember clearly was the end. The entire thing was only a half an hour, and just included some stuff I found stupid, such as the spoon chasing the soup and trying to eat him. The ending showed a table, the one from Booby once again, and about 7 kids sitting around it, each with a bowl of soup in front of them. They were sitting and looking at the camera, but with confused and almost frightened faces. The cameraman then held the can of soup in front of the kids and said, "Spoons ready?" And then it just stopped. July 1999. It was summer, and I hadn't watched 21 for a while, until one day when I had slept over at a friend's house, I decided to check it out again. My friend had gotten a TV in his room for his 6th birthday, so we stayed up very late, for us, 9:30 was very late, and watched TV. That's when I remembered Channel 21, and brought it up to my friend. We decided to see if anything was on, and to our surprise, it was. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 23. The episode was very entertaining for my friend and I, mainly because it had swearing. However, now when I think of this episode, I realize something was definitely wrong when it was filmed. The episode started with the camera on its side, while it was facing Mr. Bear, who was walking up the stairs to the cellar door. The camera then blacked out for a second before fading in, back upright and facing Mr. Bear. There was also another kid talking to him, but this kid looked about 11 or 12. He was talking to Mr. Bear for a while, but I couldn't hear very well, again, with the crappy camcorder, until the kid started to raise his voice. The kid was saying how it was late and how his sister had to go home. I could also hear more voices in the background. I remember Mr. Bear clearly saying, "Get the hell out, you're not invited," with the mentioning of the forbidden H word. But then the episode got weirder. The kid began climbing the stairs before turning around and saying how he was going to call the police. Mr. Bear began breaking into a run towards the kid, who started screaming and running as well. The camera then cut out, and that was the end of the episode. The channel then turned to static shortly after. Booby, episode 42, Playing with Scissors. One rainy afternoon, I was bored, so I decided to watch Channel 21. When I started watching, some show about a guy sitting in an armchair was just finishing. I forget what it was about though. When I first saw this episode, I thought it was for teenagers because it had blood in it, and it was very gross. When the police told me everything, I now know who the hand belongs to. The episode showed Booby and another hand with a ribbon around the pinky finger, Booby's girlfriend. Booby was holding scissors and hopping around back and forth, while his girlfriend slowly swung around aimlessly. Another hand shot into the scene. This hand was smaller and jerking violently, as if someone under the table was forcing the hand, and I later found out this was the case. Scissors are very dangerous, kids, so hold them safely, Booby said into the camera. I noticed I could also hear muffled screams, but I wasn't sure where it was coming from because of the bad sound quality. Booby's girlfriend grabbed the smaller hand, which was thrashing about, and Booby went at it with the scissors. He started with the thumb, opening the scissors wide and clasping them onto the thumb. Blood began oozing out, and the muffled screams were now very loud. My 5-year-old self was very grossed out, and that's when I decided that maybe Booby was a show meant for teenagers or grown-ups. When the scissors got to the bone, a horrible crunching noise was heard, and that's when I turned the TV off. I never discussed it with my dad because I feared he would limit my TV time. August 1999. I didn't want to watch Channel 21 after that Booby episode. In August, however, I grew more curious to see Mr. Bear's cellar for some reason. The last episode I saw of Mr. Bear was weird and had swearing, which also made me think that the show was meant for teenagers. Nonetheless, I switched over to Channel 21 when my dad was busy. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 28. Apparently this episode had been playing for the entire month of August. It was studied a lot by the police. The entire episode was just Mr. Bear sitting in a chair talking to the audience. "Hello kids, do you want to visit my cellar? If you do, please write me a letter at this address." The screen then switched to a white screen with multicolored letters reading the address. And that was what remained for the rest of the episode. And guess what I did? I sent Mr. Bear, or that sick SOB who portrayed him, a letter. I did it out of curiosity mostly, and my dad was okay with it because he thought it was a legit kid show. But then he never saw anything else of what was on Channel 21. So I wrote a letter using my best writing possible. I think it just said how I wanted to meet Mr. Bear and Booby, who also lived in the cellar. So my dad sent the letter to the address Mr. Bear said on the show, and it stayed on all day for some reason. It took about a week to get a response, which I was surprised I did. I still have the letter I received August 15th, 1999. The letter read, "Dear Elliot, thank you so much for your letter. I would love to have you in my cellar. We play games, watch movies, and go fire camping in the middle of the woods. And yes, Booby does live in my cellar. He's a good friend of mine. Please come to my house. The police cut out this address: Caledon, Ontario, Canada. I look very forward to having fun with you. Love, Mr. Bear. I cannot believe my dad never found this sketchy, because he actually took me to the house. And that's when the police came involved. Those endless questions, those pictures of terrifying kids, the woods. That's what brings me to why I'm writing this blog. That psycho and his friends did some crazy shit back then, and now it seems he's trying to get in contact with me again. The entire police thing is coming back. That has brought me back to 1999, over a decade later, and it's happening again. People have been emailing me, asking me exactly what happened in 1999. I will get to that. Those weird TV shows I was watching apparently were meant to attract kids to Mr. Bear's house. And what Mr. Bear did shocked the entire town. My dad actually drove me to Caledon, along with the address Mr. Bear left on the letter. The house was actually on the outskirts of town, an open farmland. I still remember that house. It looked like an older farmhouse that had been built in the early 1900s. The windows were all boarded up, and the house looked in a state of disrepair. As we walked up to the house, I remember my dad checking the address over and over again, and then looking at the house in disbelief. Then the door opened. I expected Mr. Bear to be at the door, but I was surprised to see a police officer emerge from the creaking doorway. The officer began talking to my dad. While I quickly asked if this was Mr. Bear's house, the officer's face cringed slightly, and he muttered, "Oh God," or something like that. He started talking quietly to my dad, so I couldn't hear, although my dad told me to go to the car anyway. And then we just went home. My dad was quiet the whole way home, and I felt something strange had happened. My dad never told me what happened for a while, and I forgot about it anyway. Channel 21 no longer came on, and when I asked my dad about it, he would have no knowledge of its existence. I think I was 13 when I learned the truth. I remembered Channel 21 one day and asked my dad about it. I guess he finally decided I should hear the truth. Caledon Local 21 was a local TV channel that ran from October 1997 through August of 1999 in the Peel region of Ontario. The entire channel was made from a house in Caledon, the one I visited, and run by a man who was not really known by anyone in the town. The channel was only available to older TVs because the signal was only picked up by rabbit ears. The man who created all the shows on the channel, all of which were kids shows. His hand was Booby, he was Mr. Bear, and he was the mysterious cameraman. The real reason he created the channel was more disturbing than was originally thought. As you may have already guessed, he kidnapped kids and held them in his cellar. But while most thought he was a serial child molester, he really wanted to use kids for another purpose. On the day I arrived, the man had fled his house the night before. The day before the police went in their investigation, I wasn't the only one watching. Update: 11/9/2011. Sorry for not answering any questions for so long. I haven't had access to my email account for quite some time. Anyway, let me finally set some things straight about what I know. Back in October, I visited the house previously owned by the man who ran Caledon Local 21. Two women that lived there, operating a daycare business. How ironic. Now, to the questions you guys emailed to me. Who else watched Caledon Local 21? I know other people watched it for sure, including those kids who wound up at Mr. Bear's house. After some Google searches, I found a couple people on the Neo Seeker forums who were discussing shows from Caledon Local 21. They talked about the kids shows I watched, but they also talked about two other shows I had never seen before. A user named I Am Real Life seemed to know all the shows that were broadcasted on 21. Here are two I've never heard of. The Fallen Angel and Life. I Am Real Life described it as a fairly boring show about a guy rambling on and on in front of a camera, how he must please Satan and appease him before it's too late. Paint with the Soul. I Am Real Life and another user called Siggy92 were discussing this show. They described it as Blair Witch-like and consisted of a cameraman wandering around a forest at night, doing nothing particularly interesting. I'll go look for the conversation and see if I can get a link. Where is Mr. Bear, or the guy who wore the costume? If I did know, I would have said earlier. I have no idea where this guy is, if he's dead or alive. Hopefully dead. When I see my dad's friend next time, I will ask him about this. I can get a more definitive answer. What did Mr. Bear do to the children? This is by far the most common question I've been asked. I found this out in October as well, via my friend's dad, who is a retired Caledon regional officer. Apparently the man playing Mr. Bear took the kids out into the woods behind the house. What he did there, the police are not exactly certain how it happened, but 16 charred bodies of children, ages 4 to 13, were found in a 15 by 15 ditch dug within the forest. My dad's friend did not want to go into exact details, but I'm seeing him next Thursday anyway, so maybe I can extort more information from him by then. That's all I have for now. Thanks for keeping an interest in my blog. I will try to gather as much information as I can for the next post. I've actually been getting pretty interested in this myself. It should be my right to know what the hell happened. Update, February 1st, 2012. I'm sorry I haven't posted anything for a while. I kinda lost interest in this blog since I hit a standstill while looking for information about the identity of the owner of Caledon Local 21. However, a few weeks ago, I struck gold. I found some answers surprisingly from the father of a kid I used to babysit. He lives just across from my street, and I used to look after his kids when they were younger. He currently doesn't have a job either. He used to live in the nearby woods outside of Caledon and witnessed the owner's activities. His name is Anthony Polo. He lived in a small bungalow outside the woods, and would often venture into it to smoke a joint of marijuana or two before returning to his work as a wood craftsman. Polo describes as sometimes we'd hear the voices of children coming from deep within the woods, as well as a glowing light off in the distance. Polo told me some of these events started in late 1997. Note, this is around the time Caledon Local 21 began airing. He apparently became annoyed by this happening every once in a while, and actually went to investigate. Polo then described what the whole scene looked like when he got there. There was a group of kids, he said about 13 to 17, and ages 5 to 12, gathered around a large fire pit with a burning fire. With them was a single adult. Polo talked to the man, noting his unusually unkempt appearance of a crack addict, as well as his constant twitching, and he asked what he was doing out in the forest with children. The man said they were on a camping trip, something they did frequently. Polo, not suspecting anything, Caledon has one of the lowest crime rates in Canada, simply left it at that and told them to be quieter. Polo then paused for a while before telling me that they never became quieter. In fact, sometimes he heard loud chanting from the children in an unknown language. He did not bother meeting with the man again, as he was moving away. I told Polo that the man was probably the owner of Caledon Local 21, but he doubted it, as he heard the man was moving to Pickering by several other residents in that area. Here's what I know now. The man would take the kids into the woods regularly for camping. The fire pit Polo described may have been the hole where the bodies of the children were found. The children Polo saw were probably the ones found dead. The man moved to a city called Pickering, a smaller city east of Toronto. I will discuss this later with my dad's friend, the ex-cop, to see if this matches anything the police knew about the man. Also, I want to see if he has any other knowledge of what was aired on Caledon Local 21. Update, March 20th, 2012. Good news, guys. I talked to my dad's friend, and he disclosed a lot of information for me. First, I asked if the police had any information on the man who ran Caledon Local 21. He replied that they only have had the same leads for years and never found a suspect. However, the Peel Region Police do have some tapes found in the house of Caledon Local 21. He took me over so I could watch a few. I guess I haven't said much about him yet. My dad's friend's name is Mitchell Wilson. A pretty nice guy. He seems to understand my thirst for knowledge on what happened during the late 90s at that house. He feels it was wrong what my dad did for not telling me very much. He took me to the Davis Road Police Station. If you don't know, it's the largest station in Caledon, and one of the largest within the Peel region of itself. Each of the main stations around Peel have some tapes. The Davis station has 3. I got to watch all of them. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to take them home, for obvious reasons. Booby, Episode 2, Friends Are Like Flowers. This was one of the first Booby episodes made. The camera looked even crappier than usual, probably even older camcorder, but the scene was set in the same place as the Booby episodes usually took place. I instantly recognized it. The episode began with Booby swaying back and forth contently for a few seconds before another hand entered. The other hand was much smaller and looked as if it belonged to a child. The smaller hand began eagerly bouncing around before sliding up to Booby, before pressing its fingertips together to kiss Booby. After a few seconds, Booby grabbed the smaller hand and squeezed it tightly. This continued for at least 10 seconds before the camera slowly panned left until the hands were out of sight. The camera continued panning until it showed a wilted daisy lying by itself. The camera then zoomed in on the daisy slowly as the little girl's voice became audible saying, "Friends are like flowers in the garden of life." The episode then ended. Paint with the Soul, Episode 10, Garbage Thrown Away. Paint with the Soul was one of the shows that I Am Real Life and Ziggy92 discussed on Neoseeker. I told the police about this and they informed me that 12 episodes of the show were made and broadcasted between December 5th, 1997 and January 1998. Exactly as I Am Real Life and Ziggy92 described it. The episode opened with a cameraman wandering around in a forest. It appeared to be in the evening, as it seemed the sun was setting. The cameraman walked along a path until he got to an area where there was a lot of garbage lying in the leaves. The cameraman looked around at the various wrappers, bottles, bags, and boxes, making sure that each of them got a few seconds of screen time. The camera then focused onto a single area before the man spoke. I recall he spoke in a very quiet and timid voice, and I swear I had heard it somewhere before, like on another Caledon Local 21 show. I could barely hear what he was saying, but he mainly talked about how humans are garbage, or something to that, and saying that we need to save ourselves by cleaning up the garbage. Us. It actually sounded really stupid, but I had a feeling of dread that came over me. I mean, that forest was possibly where the bodies were found, right? Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 25. When the police administrator brought in this tape, I actually said, "Oh shit," and chuckled a bit out loud. Of course, I got stares from the staff, but Wilson explained to them about my little experience with Mr. Bear and how I actually kept the letter he sent me. Like the previous episodes, this included a guy in a bear mascot costume. The episode began with Mr. Bear waddling over to the red tablecloth with a bottle of orange juice in his hands. On the table were 16 shot glasses, as well as a small bottle containing an unknown liquid. Mr. Bear poured an equal amount of orange juice into each glass before opening up the smaller bottle and depositing one drop into the glasses. Mr. Bear then went off camera, where there were some minor sounds such as shuffling, and then Mr. Bear emerged from behind the camera's location. Following him were 16 children. Some looked as young as 4, others looked like they were practically teenagers. As the children entered, the administrator commented that this was the only episode that showed all 16 victims. The kids all looked rather content, except for this one who had visible bruises on his face. Unlike the other kids, he had more of a fearful expression. He also looked about 11 or 12, which caused me to recognize him. He was the kid who had asked about his sister and subsequently met an unknown fate at the end of episode 23. That was the only episode I watched during July of 1999. When I told the administrator this, he confirmed that it was the same kid. He was also featured in episode 24, an episode that only aired once at 3 o'clock in July of 1999. The police have still not found the tape. Mr. Bear then broke into a song, singing about citrus fruits and how good vitamin C was for you. I could barely hear the lyrics as they were muffled by the bear mask. All the kids drank their juice, the one from episode 23 doing it rather reluctantly, and then the episode ended. After viewing the 3 tapes in the possession of the Davis Road Police Station, I am satisfied, but only temporarily. I still want to know the full story. The police still keep giving me the same crap about the creator of Calendar 21 being a fetishist pedophile, as well as an apparent cultist. I will sign off for now, get into university first, get more information later. Hopefully I will get back to this blog as soon as possible. May 12th, 2012. On April 17th, I finally got my G2 license. In Ontario, Canada, this allows you to drive a car by yourself, as well as some passengers after 6 months. I, of course, took the advantage of this and drove to Caledon for a little Sunday drive. Since I haven't updated this blog in a while, I figured I might as well visit the house where the infamous channel of my childhood was located. The house looked different than when I saw it last October. The place was no longer used as a daycare, and just sat there abandoned. However, it did have a for sale sign, showing that someone owned it. Wanting to get rid of it though. The abandoned house drew fuzzy memories from my mind, mainly of that day when my dad took me to visit Mr. Bear. A feeling of dread came upon me. What happened to the children while they were living in that house? I walked up the steps to the front door and peered in the window. Inside, I could see a nearly empty hallway with a few boxes at the end. At the end of the hallway to the right, there was a door, presumably leading to the kitchen. To the left were 2 doors, both apparently leading to the rooms visible through the windows outside. I wondered where the cellar entrance was located, and whether it had been sealed up. I walked around to the back of the house and found my answer. 2 wooden doors lying amidst an almost flat angle were padlocked shut. This had to lead to the cellar. Not wanting to hang around, you can imagine what was going through my mind at the time. I departed. Behind the house, the empty field continued until it reached a dense forest that lay beyond the horizon. I wondered if that was the forest where the bodies of the children were found. I thought to myself, screw it, and proceeded to walk across the field behind the house into the forest. The forest was oddly quiet, save for the few periodic sounds of a woodpecker drilling into a distant tree. I cautiously made my way deeper into the woods, not really caring about the fact I had no idea where I was going. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like there was something I had to find. I came to a thinner part of the woods and a few small houses in the distance. Polo's house crossed my mind, and I wondered if one of these houses had belonged to him. I neared a small clearing in which I could see 3 adequately sized logs stacked around a black charred area, showing a fire had been lit there recently. "Hey, get the hell out of our fort!" Those words nearly gave me a heart attack. I turned to my left and saw 2 dark-clothed people running toward me. My initial thought was to run. However, as they came closer, I saw they were just kids in their early teens, probably 13 or 14, maybe even 12. As they approached me, they realized my size as well. I'm 6'1", and they could have been no bigger than 5'5". One of them may have been 5'7". We said, "Get the hell out," the larger one, who was wearing a Slipknot shirt, said, half-heartedly. I stood my ground and shrugged. The shorter one was wearing a Metallica shirt and swung out a butterfly knife and held it in my direction. "No, you wouldn't want to," I said in a deep, serious tone, trying to sound as badass as possible. I pulled out my cell phone. The two kids withdrew, the one in the Metallica shirt putting the knife away. "Look, dude, we don't like people in our fort, so can you just go?" The other one in the Slipknot shirt said, obviously intimidated. I had no business in the forest anyway, so I uttered out a simple, "Fine," and turned before I realized I had a great opportunity. Did either of you hear of a guy who murdered a bunch of kids in these woods about 13 years ago? I asked the kids. The two looked at each other in confusion before the one wearing the Metallica shirt answered, "Yeah, everyone knows about that guy," he said to me as if I were stupid. The kid in the Slipknot shirt continued, "He still lives around here, in a storm drain. My big brother's friend says that he saw him in a bear costume once, wandering around the forest at night." My instincts told me this was probably a lie, and the owner of Caledon Local 21 is probably long gone, only existing as folklore in this smaller, isolated community. However, as a human, the thought of the mysterious unknown sparks curiosity within. "And where is the storm drain?" I asked, just out of curiosity. I don't actually believe the kid's story. The kid in the Metallica shirt stared at me for a few moments, his eyes seemingly full of annoyance, yet curiosity for me. "You're not from around here, are you? Why did you even come here?" Now, I do have to admit, I was slightly startled by the nature of his question. However, I figured I might as well explain why I was there, just in case people mistook my intentions. I told the kids about my experience with the man and Caledon Local 21, and I had come to maybe seek out some sort of closure, even though I wasn't exactly sure. The kids seemed fairly familiar with the channel, and they smiled and looked at each other when I mentioned it. They also became more understanding and gave me more detailed description of how to get to the storm drain. Shortly after, I just decided to turn around the way I came and head back to the house, leaving the kids at their fort. But now you're probably wondering why I left out such detail about what the kids told me just now. It's because I am choosing to conclude what I have gathered so far. Here's what the kids told me in detail. The storm drain lies ahead of the kids' fort, in the same direction I was heading. The drain ends at a small river, where excess water is drained out. Near there is a small playground. The kids told me people rarely use it. The man supposedly lives in a large pipe that rainwater drains out of. People have seen him, although always either wearing a bear mask or the mask and a full-body bear costume. Note, I do not believe this is true, and in fact, simply a myth created by the residents of Caledon. The story does not seem plausible in any way. Why did no one call the police? Didn't this guy look suspicious? And other questions like these leave the story invalid. I may visit the storm drain, not because I believe the story, but because I want an excuse to visit Caledon again, so this blog doesn't die. With no more tapes to watch, I don't know what to talk about anymore. Thanks for continuing to support me and my blog. I know there are many of you that look forward to more information about what happened in Caledon during the year 1999, and I will do my best to continue my research on the topic. Elliot out. Update, October 4th, 2012. Wow, nearly 5 months since I last updated. I'm guessing pretty much thinks that I'm dead, right? Thankfully I'm not, but in all seriousness, I have been busy the past few months. And a blog about something that could have killed me as a kid is rather low on my current priorities list. As of now, I am living in Waterloo, Ontario, attending the University of Waterloo for computer engineering. As you can imagine, engineering is no walk in the park, so obviously I nearly forgot about this blog, but as you can see, I'm back. I remember to visit the storm drain the kids from Caledon told me about. It was out in a clearing between the wooded areas, nearby a marsh. Unfortunately, I found absolutely nothing, save for a turtle that retreated into its built-in home when it saw me. I snapped pictures of the pipe and have posted as well. Also, let me tell you, it was not a storm drain like they said it was. What I saw was a simple pipe, possibly to channel access water from the nearby marsh. When I returned from Caledon, however, I simply kept putting off uploading everything until I forgot about my blog, just in case it didn't seem important anymore. Please forgive me. It was only until recently I am interested in the case. On September 10th, I received an email from this address, returntotheb@hotmail.com. Funny, am I right? Well, it gets better. I'm going to copy and paste the exact email this guy sent me. Dear Elliot, my dear, dear boy, I have missed you ever so much. Oh, how you've grown. Your twinkling eyes have stayed the same, however, those eyes looking for adventure. Oh, how imagining them brings warmth to my old bare heart. That day you came to visit me, I felt so happy. I wanted to go out and pick strawberries. He told me you would come looking. Oh yes, he told me you would come. Now it will be soon. You won't be so lonely soon. I am ever so sorry I couldn't say hello to you when you came to visit. Not once, but twice. Do not fret, however. You will soon be able to play with the other children. I will try to make my cellar even more cozier than before. 1,000 fuzzy hugs, Mr. Bear. Now obviously this letter is fake, but I would still like to thank whoever sent it. Just reading this letter creeped me out a bit because of all of this. I am now at a new interest in continuing my blog, and I guess it's just funny trying to pursue the mysteries I have always questioned. Now my roommate knows all of this, and he thought the letter was real. He actually seemed more scared than I was for a second, but then I shrugged it off. So he did too. I mean, what are the chances of this being real? How would Mr. Bear know I went to Ontario on those occasions? More or less, how would he know my email, or me still being interested in his cellar? I'm going to send a reply to return to the bee. Wow, just looking at this email address, you can tell someone wanted to freak me out. It didn't really work though. And although whoever you are, thank you for sparking my interest back in this matter. Maybe I can find out more what happened to Mr. Bear. Hopefully, because although I didn't buy that email, a part of me still feels anxious. Thank you to all of those who are still following me and have become avid fans. You are why I am choosing to continue this. Update 11/09/2013. Wow, I can't believe this blog hasn't been deleted yet. I haven't posted anything for so long. I have my reasons, and I'd rather not discuss them just yet. It has been a rather traumatic year for me. Some of you were right. I shouldn't have gone back trying to relive the mysteries of my childhood, but I couldn't resist. It has been over a year since my last post, and a lot has happened. Let's recap where I'm at right now in regards to the whole Mr. Bear incident. returntotheb@hotmail.com is no longer in use. I tried replying to the email, but got no reply. I tried again back in March, and still no response. I actually moved up to Ottawa, the capital of Canada for those who don't know, for university, so I haven't gotten back to Caledon or back home in the Peel region for a while. I have had my reasons for leaving, as you could guess why. I've had to make a new email account because people keep prank emailing me to pretending to be Mr. Bear. Thanks a lot, guys. Not. Why have I ventured back to this blog? Mitchell Wilson, remember my dad's ex-cop friend, gave me a phone call on October 23rd about a tape that was found in the branch of the Brampton Public Library. Brampton is my hometown, in case you haven't picked up on that. He claims he isn't allowed to discuss the contents of the tape with me, as it's still in evidence, but he's asked me to come by and check it out when I return home. The tape got my gears grinding again, because we all know what the last tapes I saw. I can only imagine what can be on it. I'm guessing it has something to do with Caledon Local 21. I guess I just wanted to say I am continuing this blog, and thank you for everyone who still follows it. I don't know when my next entry will be, but when I see that tape, I'll write what I find. I don't know what to expect, but the idea of seeing another tape has got me interested in the whole mystery all over again. Update, January 16th, 2014. It has been a long year for me. University has given me the usual sleepless nights, especially since I transferred to Ottawa, which is the place to party. But now I'm back home with my dad in Brampton, the town I grew up in. I got home on the 18th of December and have been visiting my friends and family, or at least that's what I would have done. Now the festive holiday cheer that I usually have this time of year is absent. To answer the hundreds of emails and comments I got, yes, I did see the tapes my dad's friend Mitchell Wilson promised to show me. These tapes, however, act as a curse. I want to know more, yet I want to forget everything. I couldn't help it. I needed to see those tapes, not for myself, but for all of you guys who are just as intrigued as I am about the ominous man in the bear suit from my past. However, after viewing those tapes, I feel a pit of dread deep inside me once again. The feeling where I know that all of those kids in those videos are dead, and that I could have been one of those kids, and that humanity is a dark, dark place. If you haven't skipped this paragraph for the juicier details below, thank you for listening to my rambling. On Friday, January 1st, I called Mitchell Wilson and asked if there was a time where I could meet him and view the tapes. Things were pretty slow at the station because of a snowstorm, so he said I could come by any time that day. The tapes were located at the branch not too far from me, so I braved the slushy roads and the terrible Brampton drivers and made my way to the Peel Regional Police Station, located at the Bromley City Center. I met Wilson at the front desk, where he led me to a second floor and to a small office. He instructed me to have a seat while he went to grab the tapes. Before leaving the office, he turned to me and said, "I know you're curious, but are you sure you want to do this?" Of course I did, or at least I thought so. Besides, Wilson's friend had pulled a lot of strings to get me here, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity. This particular station had 4 tapes on hand. I was only allowed to watch 3 of them, however, because the 4th tape was apparently too damaged to be played in a VCR. Paint with the Soul, Episode 3, How to Dust a Room. I had almost completely forgotten about this show. I never did see it on TV, but I did see that one episode at the Caledon Police Station. The episode opened up with the camera panning around a small empty room. There was a window on the opposite side of the door. Outside, it was light out. The cameraman walked toward the window, revealing a small clearing before a dark, thick forest, about 15 feet from the window. The cameraman panned around to face the door and finally spoke. "Today, I'm going to show you how to properly dust a room." I recognized the cameraman's voice as this one from before. Quiet, timid, only this time with a stutter. Now this is where things got weird. The cameraman aimed the camera at his feet, revealing a metal broomstick, and grabbed it with his free hand. His hand was that of a white male, so it was easy to see the fresh, bright red blood that covered it. The man began to explain that in order to get to the room nice and dusted, you had to make sacrifices. And with that, the man began to smash the white plastered ceiling with the broomstick. Soon, there was a significant hole in the ceiling, revealing the wooden slats that made up the roof. The floor was now pretty messed up, with chunks of ceiling littering the floor, as well as a coating of plaster from the ceiling. The man aimed the camera at the floor and began to smash the larger ceiling pieces at his feet. The man then backed up to the door and had the camera show the mess he created. And now the room is... The episode ended before he could finish. Wilson warned me that the next 2 tapes were more disturbing. I insisted to keep watching, although a voice at the back of my head told me I shouldn't. Booby, episode 30, Children of the Light. It was Booby, one of the shows that I had watched as a kid. I had never seen this episode before, and now I wish that were still true. The episode opened in the same way as every other episode I had seen. A single adult hand, Booby, was rocking back and forth, and after a few seconds he turned towards the camera and said, "Songs are sung best when sung by children," and the hand disappeared out of view below the table. After a few more seconds, suddenly the picture cut to outside, aiming at a bonfire in a small pit. It was night, and it appeared to be in a small clearing in a forest, although it was hard to tell because of the camera quality. The camera then zoomed into the fire, which was burning fairly steadily. Suddenly, a human hand was forced into the fire by a pair of adult hands. The hand was small, presumably belonging to a child, and was being firmly held in place by the 2 larger hands. Sound was absent for the first few seconds until the song began playing. The song I recognized from my childhood. I would sing it in church or at school. I went to a Catholic elementary. If you don't know it, here's a link to a YouTube video, Children of the Light. The song began playing as the hand was held in the orange flames. It continued to struggle to escape the larger hand's grip, and it continued as the flesh of the hand began to turn beet red and peel away. It continued as dark smoke began rising from the hand. It must have only taken a few minutes for the hand to become blackened, save for a few instances of bones that were now visible beneath the charred flesh. Hell, that image is burned into my mind. The hand is now limp and no longer moved. The episode then ended. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 30. Mr. Bear never ceases to disturb me, especially after what almost happened to me when I was younger. This episode takes place in the Forest of Dusk, making it slightly hard to see, especially considering the quality of the film, a trademark from anything from Caledon 21. The episode started with the camera being in the paws of Mr. Bear, aiming it at himself. The bear mask, it looked more sinister in the shadows of the trees. The unmistakable muffled voice spoke. "Hello, children. Today I will be doing a wonderful thing for my friends. I will be delivering them to a faraway land where they will surely be happy." Mr. Bear turned the camera around to show an ATV with an attached trailer. But what stood out the most was that the trailer contained 7 motionless children lying side by side. "This is the first load, but more will be on their way soon." Mr. Bear turned around and pointed the camera at a large burlap tarp spread on the ground. He picked up the tarp, revealing a large hole that must have been 12 feet deep and about 15 feet wide. The rest of the episode consisted of Mr. Bear taking each kid and dropping them into the hole. I asked Wilson if the kids were dead, to which he shook his head and replied, "Not yet." Soon all the kids were in the pit. Some were in awkward positions due to being tossed in, but they remained unconscious. The vitamin C will surely help these children on the great journey that awaits them, Mr. Bear mentioned as he panned the camera towards multiple bottles of gasoline beside a bush. The camera zoomed into the bottles as Mr. Bear hummed before the episode ended. Wilson revealed to me that these were 7 of the 16 victims found burnt to a crisp. The gasoline is what the man playing Mr. Bear used to light them on fire. A pit full of burning children. Who the hell would do that? That feeling of dread found me once again when I realized I could have been one of those kids. Wilson explained to me that he had previously lied and that the 4th tape owned by the Bromley police branch did indeed work, and the filming was of the actual burning. However, he felt that I wouldn't be able to handle the disturbing and graphic nature of the episode. And you know what? Maybe I can't. I don't even want to see it. I am satisfied now, but I just need some time to get myself together. The thing is, the man who ran Caledon Local 21 is still out there. More to come soon. Once upon a time, there lived a boy named Elliot. Elliot was a clever boy who loved playing with his friends. One day he watched a lovely television show about a bear and his children friends. The children loved helping each other, as good children should, but they also loved the bear. The bear loved the children, since the children were so good at helping him and the fallen angel. The bear and the children wanted to play forever with the help of their friend Booby, but the fallen angel needed even more help, so the children had to give the ultimate sacrifice. See, that's what good friends do, Elliot. They help each other. Help us, Elliot. Burn with us, Elliot. I want you, Elliot. He wants you, Elliot. Come back to my cellar. Pretty please, with sugar and icing on top. Mr. B. That was 1999. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. Like I always say in closing, check under your bed, look in your closet, and sleep with the light on. The life you save may very well be your own. Good night, everyone.